Rookie Nolan McLean continues to dominate, cementing his status as the Mets' new ace, and it seems like they're ready to ride him all the way to the playoffs.
You are Locked On Mets, your daily New York Mets podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello to all you amazing Mets fans. You're watching Locked On Mets, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. I'm your host, Ryan Finkelstein. I've been covering the New York Mets on this show since the 2019 season. It's the only podcast that covers the Mets 7 days a week throughout the regular season. If you want to find some of my written work, you can do so over at justbaseball.com, where I work as the editor-in-chief. Today's episode is brought to you by Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use the code LOCKEDONMLB for $20 off your first purchase. Well, Nolan McLean is clearly the ace of the New York Mets. We knew this going into his start on Tuesday, but he just continues to affirm that notion that there is no pitcher that the Mets have right now that you trust more than the 24-year-old rookie. And the crazy thing is, he didn't even get off to a great start on Tuesday night. He actually was spotted a one-run lead as Pete Alonso hit a solo homer in the first, but he coughed up that lead in the bottom half. He got the first two guys out, but then he issued a pair of walks and a pair of singles, plated 2 runs. Now, I know fans noted that the second of those walks could have been a strikeout, as McLean threw the 5th pitch of that at-bat, and it did seem to hit the corner and was not called a strike. But I'd also like to note that the 3rd pitch of that at-bat was called a strike, and it was probably a good baseball away from the zone. It's maybe, a solid, I don't know if I'd say a foot off the plate, but it definitely was further away from the zone than the pitch that just clipped the zone and was called a ball. So I wouldn't even quibble and say that he shouldn't have given up those runs. His command wasn't entirely there, particularly with his breaking balls. And he had a 24-pitch first inning before he got out of it. Second inning, he issues a leadoff walk, which was erased as Luis Torrens gunned down another runner trying to steal, gave up a single after that. So there was a stretch there in Nolan McLean's start after getting the first 2 batters out, and then after eventually retiring the final 14, where there was 6 batters in the middle where he only retired 1 batter himself across a 6-batter span. But this is what you love to see with a young starting pitcher. And obviously the stakes are nowhere near the same. But the best example I can have of this was Jacob deGrom's start against the Dodgers in the NLDS back in 2015. His first start in that series, he was brilliant. He had everything working. His second start in that series, you remember, he had nothing. And yet he still found his way. If I'm not mistaken, it might have been 6 innings, 2 runs. I know he gave up a couple, but just found his way. You need to be able to figure things out when your best stuff isn't there. When things aren't working, you need to have counters. And for Nolan McLean in this start, he mentioned it after the game, but it was pretty evident. He did not have his sweeper or curveball early. That he was not landing them for strikes. And they were very selective against Nolan McLean. That was clearly the Tigers' game plan. You look at their first 10 batters, only 2 of them swung at the first pitch, and that really continued throughout his start, but they identified it. They changed up the game plan. They went more fastball, sinker, changeup, and got away from the breaking balls, and eventually they reintroduced them and were able to still, get some swing and miss as he navigated his start. But it really was a start where he had to make a clear adjustment, and he did that, and ends up being lights out again. 44 pitches to get through the first 2 innings. But after, again, walking the leadoff guy in the second and then giving up a base hit after Torrens had gunned down the runner, he was able to get a couple groundouts to get out of that inning, and then he cruised from there. Final 4 innings were perfect. He retired the last 14 batters that he faced. He was at, again, 44 pitches through 2, only needed 46 pitches to get through the following 4 innings. So he ends the day with 90 pitches, gets through 6, gives up just the 2 runs in the first inning. His best inning came in the 5th where he struck out the side, and he wins another baseball game. So another great start by Nolan McLean. We're going to talk about him plenty in the next segment, and we'll go through some of the stats. Actually, let me just run through some of the stats now. Let me scroll down on my notes here, and we'll pull up some of these stats. Nolan McLean is the second pitcher in MLB, well, not MLB history, but the second pitcher since the ERA became an official stat in 1913, who has started off his career 4-0 with a sub 1.50 ERA and 25 or more strikeouts across his first four career starts. The other was Fernando Valenzuela in 1981, Fernando Mania. That is how good McLean has started off his career. That is via OptaStats on Twitter. McLean became the first pitcher since Chase Anderson in 2014 to win their first four starts. He's also the second pitcher in the last 100 years to earn a win in each of his first four starts or appearances with at least 25 strikeouts. That's courtesy of Jonathan Barron. Mike Mayer tweets out that pitchers in MLB history that have started their career with 4 straight games of 3 or fewer earned runs and at least 6 strikeouts and pitching at least 5 innings per start, or pitching at least 5 innings in each of his starts. Nolan McLean, Steven Strasburg. And then here's the last one. This one courtesy of where I work at Just Baseball. Most strikeouts through the first 4 career starts in Mets history. Nolan Ryan, 29. Nolan McLean, 28. And then you have Tylor, Megill, Matt Harvey, Doc Gooden, and Dick Selma, who all struck out 26. So literally making history with each start. He has been unbelievable. Now, offensively, the Mets had a huge game, really on the backs of 2 big rallies and then Pete Alonso's homer in the first. In the 4th inning, Juan Soto drew a walk, then stole second base, and that kept Pete Alonso out of a double play, which is big because Pete Alonso is leading the National League in double plays, or maybe it's Soto that's leading the National League and Alonso second. But either way, both those guys have been hitting into a ton of double plays. So having Soto stealing in front of Alonso is huge to get out of those situations. And Pete did hit a ground ball that would have been a double play ball had Soto not stolen that base. I also want to note, I made a prediction on Twitter today. Juan Soto is going to go 40-40 this year. I'm calling it out now. He now needs 13 more stolen bases. He stole 11 bags in August. And last year, Shohei Ohtani made it to August with 28 stolen bases. He then swiped 15 in August and 16 in September to finish with 59. When you have a player of this talent level that figures out how to steal, and granted, Shohei Ohtani is a much faster base runner than Juan Soto, but Soto, with his running lead, has figured out how to steal bases and has it down to a science. And now you have some big numbers that he can chase. And Juan Soto gets on first base a lot, so he's going to have plenty of opportunities over the final 23 games here to get 13 more bags. Do not be surprised if he goes 40-40. He's definitely going to go 30-30. Now, Soto advanced to third on a single by Brandon Nimmo. Mark Vientos walked to load the bases. Jeff McNeil, clutch piece of hitting. It was a good pitch, and he was able to just reach down and get it. Drives it into the outfield to drive in a run on a single. Cedric Mullins hit a sac fly, and then Luis Torrens capped off the rally. Went oppo, hit one off the foul pole, a 3-run homer. Suddenly the Mets had a big 6-2 lead. 7th inning, Juan Soto hit a leadoff homer. Pete Alonso hit another homer, so they went back-to-back. 37 on the season for Soto, 33 on the season for Alonso. So they're up to 70 combined between the two of them. After that, you had Brandon Nimmo with the base hit, Mark Vientos with a double that honestly should have been caught, a fly ball on the warning track, but 2 outfielders collided, center fielder and right fielder, and that ball dropped. It was ruled a double. Jeff McNeil got a base hit to drive in 2 because Acuna pinch ran for Vientos, and so both Vientos and McNeil able to score. After Mullins grounded out, Luis Torrens and Brett Beatty each singled, with Beatty picking up an RBI, and then Francisco Lindor capped off the rally with a sac fly. The Mets were then able to save their bullpen late in that game, which is huge, setting them up well for today's game this afternoon. You had Kevin Herget cover most of it, and then Ryan Stanek had to finish it off. But the Mets are able to take this series early. The Reds lost, so they now have a 5-game lead in the wild card. Should note also the Giants have now pulled even with the Reds, so we got 2 teams to scoreboard watch. But the Mets are back on a good path here, and we'll see if they can finish off a series sweep with Clay Holmes on the mound. But I want to stay on Nolan McLean in the next segment because Mike Puma reported after the game that the Mets are leaning towards starting Nolan McLean on 4 days rest on Sunday, as they maybe are trying to really put their foot down on the throat of the Reds in that head-to-head they're going to have over the weekend. And that does set up some interesting things for McLean down the stretch, as it appears like the Mets are treating McLean like an ace, not only just by the way they are, marketing him and the way that he is kind of front and center now, but also by the way that they are trying to use him, where it seems like they're really putting him in a position to start as many times as possible down the stretch. So I want to go through what that means for this rotation moving forward in just a minute. Today's episode is brought to you by Upside. Are you still paying full price for gas? Stop leaving money behind. Get real cash back every time you fill up with the free Upside app. Simply download the free Upside app in the App Store or Google Play right now and start earning cash at the pump today. Use my limited time promo code SEASON. You're going to get an extra 25 cents back per gallon on your first fill up. You can make up to $300 a year just from buying the gas you already needed. At first, I thought it was too good to be true, but it's totally legit. Real people are getting paid just to make their daily commute, and you can too. Plus, you can cash out anytime to your bank account, PayPal, or an e-gift card for Amazon or other top brands. Don't let this offer drive on by. Download the free Upside app now and start using that limited time promo code SEASON for a limited time 25 cents per gallon bonus. That's promo code SEASON. Offers vary by user and location. Go to upside.com for terms and conditions. Today's episode is also brought to you by Gametime. Have you ever decided at the last minute that you want to head out to the ballpark and check out a game with your friends or family? Well, Gametime will come in clutch, giving you the best way to get last-minute tickets without the stress. Gametime makes buying tickets fast and simple. Prices on the app actually drop the closer you get to first pitch. That's why for me, I'm not buying my tickets typically until I'm walking into the ballpark. Once I get up to security, that's when I am locking in my deal. I can view my seats in a matter of seconds, 2 taps, then you're all set. You can check out. You're ready to go. They go right to your phone, and Gametime is the official ticketing partner of Locked On MLB, making it easy to browse the app for an exciting upcoming MLB game. Like maybe you want to catch the Mets against the Rangers next weekend. You can do that with Gametime. Take the guesswork out of buying those tickets with Gametime. Down the Gametime app, create an account. Use the code LOCKEDONMLB for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account. Redeem the code LOCKEDONMLB. That's LOCKEDONMLB for $20 off. Download the Gametime app today. Last minute tickets, lowest price, guaranteed. If you're watching on YouTube today, do me a favor, hit that subscribe button. Help us get closer to our next goal of 15,000 subscribers. And make sure you check out our postcast after every Mets game. We have a live stream that goes up once the Mets have their final out of the game. So you can make sure you check that out. It's hosted by Chris Schubert. Today, though, with the day game, I'll probably be filling in. So if you want to make sure you don't miss that live stream after the game, hit that notification bell and make sure you're subscribed. Let's now talk about how the Mets are planning to use Nolan McLean moving forward. Now, McLean, through his first 4 starts, with a 1.37 ERA and a 0.76 WHIP, he's allowed just 4 runs in 26 1/3 innings pitched, has issued 7 walks, 13 hits. So 20 base runners in 26 1/3 innings pitched. That's how you get to your 0.76 WHIP, and he has 28 strikeouts. He's the ace of the Mets, and Mike Puma, after the game, reported that the Mets are leaning towards starting Nolan McLean on 4 days rest, and they're planning to also flip David Peterson and Jonah Tong. Carlos Mendoza actually said that prior to the game, that they're leaning towards having David Peterson pitch on Friday in Cincinnati and Jonah Tong on Saturday. So let's start there. Why Peterson before Tong? Well, this sets up David Peterson to pitch on 5 days rest instead of 6 days rest, which is the cadence that has worked best for him this year. I mentioned this on a show the other day. On 4 days rest this season, David Peterson has a 6.31 ERA. I believe that's 5 or 6 starts. He's made 16 starts on 5 days rest, has a 2.94 ERA in those outings. And then in the other 5 starts that he's pitched on more than 5 days rest, 6 days rest or more, he's sitting at a 3.49 ERA. So this allows him to pitch on 5 days rest. This also will push Jonah Tong out of having to pitch in Philadelphia in that series at Citizens Bank, which you could take it one of 2 ways. On one hand, I don't necessarily think the Mets are in a great position going into that series without Jonah Tong, and if Nolan McLean pitches on Sunday, he won't be in that series either. But this sets up David Peterson to pitch on 5 days rest on Friday, come right back around and throw on 5 days rest on Thursday in the final game of that series against the Phillies. But I think what this is really about more than anything else, it's about, for one, maybe they don't want Tong in that series, pitching in that environment, which you can get. That sets Tong up to make his next start back at home. But also, I think when you're looking at Nolan McLean going on Sunday, this is a move that shows you how the Mets feel about McLean and how they want to get him into the series where you have a team that's chasing you rather than having pitch in the series on the team that you're chasing. It's almost an admission that it's pretty unlikely that the Mets are going to storm back in and win the National League East. They're kind of accepting their fate a little bit. But it also means that Nolan McLean can start 5 games down the stretch instead of just 4. So you're going to get as many games as possible out of McLean by starting him in this game on Sunday. Now, you could have accomplished it by having him go on 4 days rest from here on out. So if he had gone and pitched on 5 days rest on Monday in Philly, he could have gone on 4 days rest from that point forward and accomplished the same thing. Here's how it all sets up, though. Clay Holmes obviously going this afternoon. David Peterson on Friday, Tong on Saturday, McLean on Sunday. In Philly, because McLean can't pitch until Friday, and that's on 4 days rest, and Tong is unlikely to go on 4 days rest, you're going to have some combination of Kodai Senga, Sean Manaea, Clay Holmes, and David Peterson in that series. We'll talk about Tylor Megill in the next segment. Technically, he could be made available for that series as well. I don't know if they would start Brandon Sproat against the Phillies, but it seems unlikely that they would. You never know, though. What does it mean for McLean, though, beyond pitching in Cincinnati on Sunday? Well, that would set him up to then go on 4 days rest again if they wanted to against the Rangers, potentially against Jacob deGrom next Friday night at Citi Field, which would be a wild matchup. That would be pretty awesome. Then you can go with Jonah Tong, then you go with any of the other veterans that you want to, whether it's Senga, Manaea, whoever pitches well in the Philly series, you can stick somebody in that game. You have a day off, then the Padres come to town for 3. Then the Nationals will finish off that homestand, which would be the last homestand of the season. You'd then go and you'd face the Cubs after another day off on a Monday. But McLean would either pitch on Wednesday against the Padres, again on regular rest, or you have him go on 5 days rest, and then you can have him turn around and pitch on 4 days rest against the Cubs. Now, the Mets are not thinking all the way there. I think they're simply looking at, we want Nolan McLean to pitch against the Reds. And we want to make sure that we create as much separation as possible from the team that's chasing us. Now, I will say, I'm a little more nervous about the Giants than the Reds, although I'd have to check the schedule on both of those teams. But the Giants are playing good baseball, and I said it, I don't know on this show, but I definitely talked about on the Just Baseball show, how the Giants were the team in this race that I feared a little bit more than the Reds, just because they have the star players, Rafael Devers, Matt Chapman, Willie Adames. Like, they have the team that can maybe go on a little bit of a run down the stretch. But again, the Reds are a team chasing you. So that's part of this. The other thing is, I wonder if the Mets want Nolan McLean to get very familiar with pitching on 4 days rest. Because again, it could set him up to pitch in a game 162 if that matters against the Marlins. If it doesn't, all right, great. He'll pitch against the Rangers after the Reds. He'll pitch in the Padres series. He'll pitch in the Cubs series. And those are the 2 teams that you might be chasing for wild card positioning. But he'll go on 4 days rest all but one time down the stretch. Okay? Then you get to October. If Nolan McLean starts game 1 of the wild card round, I went and I looked at the schedule, did the math. Not that I'm getting too far ahead of myself, but I obviously am. I was just curious, though. How does it set up for your ace in the playoffs? So for McLean, if he started game 1 of the wild card round, he could turn around and start game 2 of the NLDS. And then to pitch in game 5 of the NLDS, he would have to go on 4 days rest. And to pitch that game 2, I believe he'd also have to go on. Actually, that game 2 might be on 5 days rest of the NLDS, because they have the schedule a little bit weird because they want to stagger the AL and the NL. So the NLDS game 1 will be played on a Saturday, and then Sunday you have an off day, I believe, and then you'll go on a Monday. But regardless, to pitch in 2 games in the NLDS after pitching in the wild card, he's going to have to go on 4 days rest. So this gets him more familiar with that. It gets him into a series against the Reds, to beat a team that is chasing you. And then it also opens up the door for having him go in the game 162 if that matters to pitch you into the playoffs. So this is all indicative of how the Mets are looking at Nolan McLean as the guy that you want to structure your rotation around. We saw them do this last year with Sean Manaea, where they were setting things up so they could get Manaea into as many games as they could because he was the horse. Nolan McLean's the horse that they're trying to ride. And that's a lot of pressure on a 24-year-old, but he seems ready for it. So it's going to be really exciting to see these next 4 or 5 starts he's going to make this regular season. I'll tell you right now, we're watching Nolan McLean's rookie year, though. I want to make that very clear. Because when it comes to rookie eligibility, we talked a lot about when the Mets debuted him after August 15th, which meant that he would not accrue the 45 days needed to use his rookie year this season. So his rookie eligibility would still be intact for next year. So if he started the season on the opening day roster, which of course he will, barring health, then won the rookie of the year, the Mets would get that draft pick for the prospect promotion incentive. But if you hit 50 innings pitched in a season, you no longer retain your rookie eligibility. Nolan McLean's at 26 and a third or 26 and 2/3. I think it's 26 and a third. 26 and a third innings pitched through his first 4 big league starts. Tonight, I thought through the first 2 innings, is McLean going to get through 5? He ended up getting through 6. He's going to make at least 4 more starts this year. If he averages 6 innings pitched across those 4 starts, he will clear that 50 inning threshold. He will not be a rookie next year, which is fine. You have Jonah Tong, you have Carson Benz, you have Jet Williams, you have plenty of rookies that can vie for that prospect promotion incentive. That's still on the table. The one thing you don't want to happen, funny enough, would be for Nolan McLean to win Rookie of the Year this year, because then he would be awarded a full year of service time. So instead of having 6 years of control of Nolan McLean beyond this season, you'd have 5. But you know what? The Mets can wash any of that away by simply giving this kid a contract extension in the offseason. And I would strongly recommend they do that. Buy out all of his team control and a couple years of free agency and lock the kid up. That's what I would do. But regardless, Nolan McLean is the New York Mets ace, and they are planning to ride him all the way down the stretch here and into October. And that's going to be fun to watch. But they're going to have to figure out some other starting pitchers too. And one of them could be Tylor Megill. To close out the show, I want to talk about his rehab start and give you updates on a lot of injured Mets: Francisco Alvarez, Jose Siri, Jesse Winker. We're going to run through them all, as well as Tyrone Taylor, who just got added to the IL. So we'll do all of that roster upkeep here in just a minute. Today's episode is brought to you by Monarch Money. Most people can't name all of their financial accounts or even what they're worth, whether it's their 401ks, their properties, their investments. And when you don't have that full picture, you can end up leaving money on the table. That's where Monarch Money comes in. It's an all-in-one personal finance tool that brings your entire financial life together in one clean, easy-to-use interface on your laptop or phone. Monarch does the heavy lifting for you. You can link all of your accounts in minutes, see clear data visuals, and get smart categorization of your spending, and finally feel in control of your money without ever touching a spreadsheet. I linked all my accounts to Monarch, and immediately I started to see things that I didn't like those subscriptions that I wasn't using but I was paying for each month, or how much I was spending on takeout. So canceled the subscriptions, started to be a little bit more conservative with my spending. Don't let this financial opportunity slip through the cracks. Use the code LOCKEDONMLB at monarchmoney.com in your browser for a half off your first year. That's 50% off your first year at monarchmoney.com with the code LOCKEDONMLB. We have an important request. Locked On wants to hear from you. We put together a survey to learn more about our listeners and make your favorite podcast even better. This is your chance to tell us what you like, what you don't, and answer questions about our advertising. Go to lockedonpodcast.com/survey to get started. Everyone who completes the survey will be entered for a chance to win one of 10 $100 Amazon gift cards. Again, that is lockedonpodcast.com/survey. You can also find a link in the show notes or the QR code on the screen if you're watching on YouTube. Thanks for helping us out. All right, so let's talk about the roster moves the Mets made before the game on Tuesday. Tyrone Taylor went to the IL with a hamstring injury. Now, we heard about this on Monday, that he'd been a little bit banged up, which is unfortunate because just when he started to swing a hot bat, he hits the IL. Jerry Young was added to the roster, but the Mets used the injury designation of Taylor to bring back Kevin Herget, who was sent down within the last 15 days. And the rule is once you option a player to AAA, they have to spend 15 days on assignment in the minor leagues, or they can be recalled sooner if it's an injury replacement. So by function, Herget replaces Tylor. Jared Young replaces Brandon Waddell, who went down. He did a great job finishing off that game on Sunday, but this gave the Mets an opportunity to bring up Herget and to bring another bat up to the roster and Jared Young instead of playing short on the bench. Technically, I guess you wouldn't have been short because you already have Acuna up, but Jared Young gives you a left-handed bat, and Young has been swinging it pretty well. In August in AAA, he was hitting 362, 429 on base, 660 slug with 6 home runs. So I think they're looking at Young as a little bit of a hotter bat that's more in rhythm right now than Ronnie Mauricio. You can't send down Ronnie Mauricio, but I'm going to explain that a little bit more. Well, you could, but I'll explain that a little bit more in a couple minutes here when we talk about Tylor Megill. Getting back to the pitching side of it, though. Herget, we obviously just saw him. He finished off the game. So they used that bullet. He'll likely get optioned. I think Austin Warren probably comes back into the picture for the final game of this series, unless they just think that with Justin Hageman, they have a fully rested bullpen. Everybody outside of Ryan Stanek got a day on Tuesday. So they might just decide to hold on to Herget for now and not grab Warren just yet. But if they do want a fresh arm, I think Austin Warren comes back. The only reason why they wouldn't do it is just because it's a day game after a night game, and it might be hard to get Austin Warren from Syracuse, to Detroit to then Cincinnati. Who knows? But I think we probably see Austin Warren as the next guy that comes on up. He has a sub-1 ERA this year in those appearances he's come up and pitched in the mop-up duty. So I'd like to see Warren back. Now, for this game today, again, Clay Holmes is starting. Hageman fully rested. He threw 67 pitches and made a start last week in Syracuse. So that's the guy that would pitch if Holmes gets knocked out of the game early and the Mets are trailing. If they're winning, they got a full rested bullpen again. Diaz, Raley, Rogers, Soto, Helsley. Those guys will probably pitch in a close game. I know Mets fans don't want me to hear Helsley would pitch, but you never know. So that's the status on the pitching front. Jesse Winker was sent back to New York after playing a couple games on a rehab assignment, and he's once again shut down from doing any baseball activities with his ailing back. Good chance we don't see Jesse Winker again this season. If we do, it'd probably be in the playoffs, and then how can you actually get him ramped up in time? I just would not count on it. Jose Siri, though, moved up to AAA, and he batted leadoff. He was the DH tonight. He went 1 for 5 with 4 strikeouts. I don't think we'll see Jose Siri, rushed up to replace Tyrone Taylor. In fact, I'd almost think that there's a better chance that Tyrone Taylor can come back before Siri because he might not even need a rehab assignment. This might have just been, all right, rest up for another week, and then we'll get you back on the roster. So we'll see exactly if and when Siri makes an impact on this team, but it's good that he's up in AAA. He's healthy. Now it's just a matter of playing back-to-backs, playing center field more, seeing what type of workload he can get, and if it's really even worth it to add him to the roster when it's all said and done. Francisco Alvarez caught the whole game, went 1 for 4 with 2 strikeouts. Imagine he's going to catch it back-to-back on Wednesday here today, and maybe even play again on Thursday as the DH if they want to get him some more at-bats. We'll see if he spends the whole week in Syracuse to get some playing time under him, or if the Mets end up having him meet them in Cincinnati for that upcoming series. And they could even, at that point, if they wanted to, option Jared Young right back down. If they really wanted to, they could make that move and carry 3 catchers if they want to have that extra insurance on Francisco Alvarez with Hayden Sanger up, or you just make the move Alvarez for Sanger. Tylor Megill had a pretty decent start. The line looks a little bit worse than it actually was. First inning, 1-2-3 frame with a couple of strikeouts. Second inning, he loaded the bases, but did not give up a run. Got a ground out. Then he walked a batter, got a line out, then a bloop single, then an infield single, which was one that Megill fielded. So it's probably just a chopper that was placed in the right spot. Got a big strikeout to get out of the bases loaded jam. Third inning, again, had to pitch through some traffic. Strikeout, single, line out, single, then a line out to get out of it. Both of those line outs were relatively softly hit to the third baseman. Fourth inning, 1-2-3 frame with another strikeout. So through 4, he did not give up a run. He gave up 4 hits, 1 walk, and was sitting at 66 pitches. Goes back out for the 5th, gives up a single, a double, and a walk, gets pulled. Alex Carrillo comes on and gives up the 2 inherited runs. 1 came across with Megill on the mound. 2 came across once he left. So he ends up giving up 3 and 4 plus through 79 pitches. 44 of them were 4 strikes. When it comes to Tylor Megill, he began his rehab assignment on August 12th. So if you count 30 days on a rehab assignment, that means he has to be activated or optioned to AAA on September 11th. That's when he is due to return. The Mets can have him make 1 more rehab start on Sunday on regular rest. Then they could activate him on Thursday to pitch out of the bullpen on 3 days rest. More likely he might, pitch after that, but that's when they would activate him. So we'll see. Every chance they want to give him 1 more rehab start, or if they want him to make a start against the Phillies, they can do that as well. Or if they just want him to pitch out of the bullpen in that series against the Phillies, they could activate him again at that point. The other option, if the Mets would prefer to use their roster the way they have, cycling in fresh arms to pitch mop-up duties, and they don't necessarily want Tylor Megill as part of this team, they can wait until the 11th. And this is why I wanted to wait to tell you about the Ronnie Mauricio situation, because it's the exact same thing with Megill. If they wanted to, on the 11th, they could option him to AAA because Tylor Megill has an option. There are not 20 days left in the minor league season once you get to that point. So there is a rule when it comes to using options. If a player spends 20 days in the minor leagues after being optioned at any point throughout the season, 20 days in the minors, you use an option year. An option year is, what it sounds like. It's what all of these pitchers who've been going up and down have been using. It's what Acuna has been using this year. An option year means you can option a player up and down as many as 5 times in a given season. But if a player spends less than 20 days in the minor leagues, they do not have that option year used. So that's why I mentioned Ronnie Mauricio, because Mauricio has spent 17 days in the minor leagues this year. When the Mets at the trade deadline picked up Cedric Mullins, you might recall I said the Mets should option Mauricio, let him play every day in Syracuse, so that if you needed him, he would be in rhythm. You have Acuna be your bench piece, and then you would preserve Acuna's option, because at that time, both those guys were sitting at 17 days in the minor leagues. So you could have preserved Acuna's option. So next year, if Acuna couldn't break camp because Jet Williams was going to, you'd have the ability to option him to the minor leagues. Instead, they chose to keep rostering Mauricio. They sent Acuna down. So they have now used Acuna's last option. Next year, Luis Acuna will have to be on the Mets roster all year, or they'll have to trade him. Ronnie Mauricio, though, you can still keep that flexibility. And I don't think that Mauricio is going to gain enough in a couple of weeks of at-bats where it makes it worth it sending him down to lose that option. Because not only does that option make him more valuable to the Mets, because if you're in a situation where it's Beatty, Vientos, Mauricio vying for spots, and Acuna and Jet, whoever it is, if Mauricio doesn't make the team, you can send him to the minor leagues and you can have him as that option in the minors. Also, if you're going to trade Ronnie Mauricio, him having an option makes him more valuable on the trade market, because there are teams who have 40-man roster crunches that are going to prefer having a guy on their 40 that they can send down. So that's why I don't think Mauricio gets optioned this season. And that's also why the Mets, if they wanted to, could keep Megill in AAA for the rest of the year, because he's not going to spend 20 days on a minor league option. Right now, he is technically on major league rehab. So once he finishes his major league rehab, those 30 days, if they decide to not bring him up because they just like cycling the Brandon Waddell, Justin Hageman, Austin Warrens of the world in that spot, and if you bring up Megill and he pitches mop-up duty, you can't use him for 4 or 5 days, whatever it is, right? Then you keep him parked in Syracuse unless you need him, and you still wouldn't use that option. You'd retain it for next year, which makes Megill more valuable to the Mets or on the trade market next season. So just wanted to cover all of my bases when it comes to the Mets roster, but that's where they're at. My guess is it's not going to come into play. I'd imagine that Megill is going to be more valuable to the Mets roster than these other guys. I just wanted to put it out there as a potential thing that they could do. I would think that Megill is either going to make a start or be a piggyback option. Like I think the Mets, as we talked about, and I might do a show on this tomorrow, the Mets very well could decide that they want to just tag team their veterans down the stretch. And they have the ability to do that because they have enough off days, and if they're pitching McLean like every fourth or fifth day, or well, I mean every fifth day, but on 4 days rest or 5 days rest from here on out, and they might do the same thing with Peterson. He might go every 6th day. Those are the guys you're going to prioritize, and with everyone else, you just sort of cobble it together however you can. But that's going to be all for today's edition of Locked On Mets. Just realizing I left that QR code on the screen the whole time. But hey, if you want to take that survey, we really would appreciate your feedback. So you can do that now. And thank you all for tuning in. As always, make sure you follow, rate, and review wherever you get your podcast. If you're watching on YouTube, you hit that subscribe button. I'll be live probably after the game today, so make sure you check that out. Thank you for making Locked On Mets your first listener, your first watch every day. Now for your second watch, check out Locked On MLB Game Night, the show that'll take you around all the action in Major League Baseball with insight from our local experts and league-wide experts. That'll take you through all the games. You can check out Locked On MLB Game Night on the Locked On MLB YouTube channel, as well as the Locked On MLB podcast feed.